I'm very, very excited to welcome you to the video game localization webinar. My name is Hila, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Blend. I hope you all can hear me well, and I do want to encourage you to use the chat and the Q&A. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to ask, and we are going to answer as soon as we can. We are going to talk today about video game localization best practices. We hope to share with you everything we know about all the aspects of game localization, from translation to voice, and in between. As I said, my name is Hila. I'm excited to be here. I just want to take 1 minute of this webinar's time just to tell you a bit about Blend. We are hosting this webinar, and it's not going to be about us, so just 1 minute. Blend is a global localization provider. We are all-in-one localization platform. We take global brands and help them become natively local in new markets. That's what we do. We are localizing all types of content, media to over 120 languages. And we work with many types of companies. Obviously, today we are going to focus on gaming. We offer a tech platform to make it easy to work with us, and also building end-to-end workflows, integrations, using all the AI and advanced tools that are out there. And we have a very strong community of translators, linguists, content editors, and voice actors. That's us in a nutshell. Talking about gaming, we have lots of experience in game localization. We offer all the a range of services when it comes to game, from the translation itself to testing, language QA, functionality QA, in-game context, and obviously marketing when it comes to take the games to the market, video ads, marketing campaigns, emails, in-app messaging, everything that is involved. Before we get started, and I pass the mic to two distinguished speakers that we have here with us, I just want to share with you a few examples of translation gone wrong in the gaming industry. So this one, you're probably familiar with it. This is coming from Nintendo. That was originally published in 1986 in Japan. And obviously later on they took it to North America and Europe. And this is the translation that you can see in the game. A winner is you. Some people find it funny. This one, again, from a Japanese publisher, the iconic game Metal Gear. Also released in North America. Thankfully, gaming localization has come a long way since they translated this, I Feel Asleep. And another example is this one, All Your Base Are Belong, coming again from Japan, from Namco. And here you can see what people are saying about game localization in Reddit or in other online forums. The gamers, the audience, the players are very sensitive to these mistakes. They want to feel that either you speak their language or you keep the game in English. And it's very clear. You can read you can read it on your own. Yeah. It's like the games are literally using old idioms exclusively used in Spain 50 years ago. So this is what people are saying. And I think we care today about our audience, their satisfaction, retention, conversion, right? So that's what it's all about. And we are here to talk to you today about this industry and the challenge of taking games global. And in order to do that, we ran a survey among localization managers in the gaming industry at the end of last year. And we asked them to share with us their main challenges. So you can see that many of them need help with in-game localization, LQA, voiceover, and many of them struggle with functional QA. In many, many countries, devices, languages, right? This is a big challenge. What else they shared with us? They said that finding the right balance between the best equivalent for creative marketing text and adhering to character limits is a challenge. Lack of initial internationalization in the games, in the development stage, making sure prompts that convey important information to the gamer are easy to understand and are accurate and clear. So these are a few of the challenges that the gaming industry people are facing. I do want to ask you one question before we start. So I'm going to launch a quick poll and you should be able to see it on the screen. I hope you do. Alex, do you see the poll? Guys, maybe I need to put it here.
Yes, it's here.
Yep, I see it.
Okay, great. So awesome. Thank you for answering us. We have a few quick questions like this one just to make sure we answer your needs. Okay, great. I assume all of you responded already. I'm gonna end it. Thank you. And yeah, I could next time I will share the results with you too. So I want to invite Mike, my colleague. Mike is working with game developers already for 17 years. He's with the voice industry, voice recording, voiceover, voice localization. So he's going to share with us his best practices from the localization of games during all these years. Mike?
Sounds
Here
great.
you are. Welcome.
Thanks, Hila. Appreciate the introduction and appreciate you guys putting this together and having me. And thanks for all the attendees who've joined. I'm excited to talk to you guys about everything game localization, just various processes, and also going into different markets. Bear with me because I'm losing my voice currently, which is always fun timing. But before we kind of get into different markets, the one thing I really want to cover is onboarding specialized linguists for games. It's really, really important that as a localization provider that you do that for your customer. You don't want to just go with a linguist that's used to only just doing documents and things like that. It's definitely a specialized team for this niche market. Games are such an art form, and the characters in them are so stylized and vibrant and dramatic. And ideally, we also love to work with linguists who are gamers themselves because they really understand that whole world of being immersed into a game. So it's really important that when you onboard linguists, that they're vetted the right way when working on games for your clients. Because really, more than any other application, they are a full collaborator with the game and the whole process, and which can be a lengthy one. You know, when you're working on a huge game, it can be a lengthy process, and you need to have the right team in place to get that done. So we can move on to the next slide. So I'd like to cover a few global markets, just to kind of give you an idea of what to focus on and the entry into those markets. And we'll first tackle China, which is the most difficult market to tackle for sure. It used to be that English was the source language, and it's no longer the case. Sometimes English is, but it's a lot of times now it's in Chinese. And we're used to working with Chinese developers, as that's one of our biggest clients are in China. And really, Western publishers are eager to enter China, and vice versa. Chinese companies want to grow their games in the West, but there's a lot of cultural and differences between the two, and it can be very sensitive, especially when you're talking about politics, which can be very controversial. So those are some things that you need to keep in mind when going into the Chinese market, which again is very difficult. But if you can crack into it, it's very worth it because obviously it's a huge part of the population and lots of gamers in that population. Let's move on to some Chinese marketing challenges. So having a local Chinese publisher is let's move back one. There we go. Having a local Chinese publisher is key to enter this tough market, as it's highly regulated. As most of you know, that most social media sites are blocked in China. So call it like LinkedIn for an example, YouTube for an example. It's all blocked. A lot of other popular channels are blocked in other Asian markets like Japan and Korea. And then ISBN codes are key to launching your game in the Chinese market, and are highly regulated. So it becomes really important to have a local Chinese publisher to help you get into that market and crack into it for sure. Moving on to Europe, which is a bit easier than cracking into China. Obviously lots of languages spoken in Europe, but what we like to focus on and what our clients like to focus on is FIGS. So, which is French, Italian, German, and Castilian Spanish. And there's a few reasons for that. One is it's spoken by 78% of the EU, which is 2.5 billion people worldwide. And it's a huge revenues as well. So $11.6 billion in game spend in that market. And we have in those four languages, we have the largest pool of translators, the largest pool of voice actors. And because of that, it tends to be more affordable than cracking into other languages in the EU. So when you're focusing on languages to bet your money on, FIGS is a great spot to look at. So just focusing on Latin America a bit, most developers sort of default to a European Spanish, but I would actually encourage you to look at Latin America because it's a huge market that I think sometimes gets overlooked in games at times. Obviously, there's lots of different countries in Latin America, and Mexico has the largest spend in games, but it's something that should be looked at. Now, one thing that we will do is when we can compile them all together and create more of a neutral Spanish option for all of Latin America. And we'll move on to this one, which when we do a neutral Spanish, the reason why we focus on that is it avoids all the regionalisms and grammatical quirks that you see between the different countries in Latin America. And really, it's a standard for translation and voice acting that we've been using for, and most other LSPs been using for years and years. And the clients love it because it reaches a broader audience. Now, neutral Spanish is not really preferred by people in Europe, although they can understand it. For European Spanish, you'd want to go with obviously a Castilian Spanish, but for neutral Spanish, it covers all of Latin America. So really, in talking about localization, when is the right timing to get into or talk about localization for your game? The short answer is sooner is better than later, of course, but later is definitely better than never. I think it's something you definitely want to approach. It has a lot to do with the game size and the funding you have. Like, for example, a big game will likely be already paired with a publisher, and localization would be top of mind. So that's going to be set up much earlier if it's a AAA game. Whereas if it's an indie game, you're really focused on creating your game, getting it out there, getting funding for it, and getting that launched and get some excitement behind it. And once that's done, then I think at that point, most indie developers will then decide to do localization afterwards. So it's something that can be very profitable for you, and it's something you want to look at, but the timing will depend obviously on your particular situation. So obviously, the earlier you start the localization process, it's much easier to fold it into development and get it out to the market faster. And then when I say localization or getting it done earlier, it's not just text and scripts. You should also consider coding and formatting all the different formats for all the different languages. So I'll give you some examples, and here's a checklist right here. Times would be a consideration, dates, measurements, whether the language reads left to right or right to left, Some languages use more text than others, obviously. Spanish is a good example. So Spanish is generally 1.2 times longer than English. And a lot of other languages are longer than English. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. But giving your localization partner early access to materials of your language or your different languages you want to go into in the future is definitely key. So just to kind of give you an example of a localization workflow, and one that we do here, and I think a lot of other LSPs probably do as well. So starting with analyzing the content and the glossary, this is super important. It's looking through all the material. The glossary is deciding on all the key terms and working with the client on those key terms, because we may want to localize it and translate it in a certain way, but we want to collaborate with the client to make sure that's in line with their goals and the words they want to use in their game. So that's all going to be approved ahead of time. Once that's done, we pre-process that into translation-ready scripts, and then that point we have our game team that's there that's going to translate the script at that point. But outside of just translation, we want to make sure that it's post-edited and reviewed by a human. So it's a separate person after it's translated, reviewing all the text and making sure it's right for the game itself. And then another person that looks at the cultural and visual review, which is super important, especially in games, because if you're going to a different language, we want to make sure that the imagery works for that culture, and it's not going to be offensive in any way. That'd be awful. And it's all in line with what that culture is expecting. Once all that's complete, we'll go into voice and video localization. And Chris will touch more about this as he gets into his part, but this is a huge part of the process where we're casting the voice actors, we're getting directors in place, script coordinators in place, engineers. Part of it may be video synced cutscenes that we have to do in session. So this is a huge part of the process, is recording all the dialogue, which could be, if you have an indie game, you may not have as much dialogue. If you're a AAA game with lots of cutscenes and dialogue, we'll have extended sessions with, could be a few actors and it could be a couple hundred actors, which is really exciting and fun to tackle. And then we'll get into post-processing. So all the editing of the files, making sure that everything's clean, is processed similarly. So there's because the audience will notice it, especially in the game community. The audience, if it's not edited and recorded the same way every time, they will point it out and they will comment on social media, and you really don't want that for your game. You want it to be totally seamless. And then we'll do a language QA, a functional QA, and then delivery to the client at that point. Move on to the next slide. So I'm going to share just a few case studies of some of the things that we've worked on, and just some similar projects that other LSPs would probably see in their workflow as well. So one is Red Games, who is a developer mostly specializing in family-friendly mobile games, and they maintain licenses with global brands like Lego, Hasbro, and Crayola. Two of their largest titles are which we've worked on, as Lego Brawls and Transformers Tactical Arena. And we actually handled 32 language pairs for that one. So that was quite an overhaul with 1.2 million words. Let's move on to the next one. So just to touch on Lego Brawls, let's go back one. To touch on Lego Brawls, it's available on all platforms. It's an action platformer with a lot of character and team customization, which is using designs from many popular Lego sets and minifigures. Everyone knows what Lego is, I hope. And for this one, we localize menus, the user interface, and the heads-up display in 14 languages. And last but not least, one more case study. Transformers Tactical Arena is a real-time strategy game exclusive to Apple. We localized similar elements for this one, but with gameplay that's more strategic. There was more text localization required, to explain the many different attack options, weapons, and fighting systems. And we handled 13 languages for this particular project. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to add to what you talked about, like about the culture's sensitivity and all the challenges when breaking into a new market. It's such an important topic. And I have an anecdote to share with the audience because we had a client that told us a story that I found it very funny. So it was a Chinese gaming developer that was entering Turkey. They had some Muslims gamers, users playing their games, and then the Chinese developers, they wanted to celebrate the local holidays, and it happened to be Ramadan in Turkey, and they created some in-game pop-ups to celebrate the holiday, and it was like Happy Ramadan, and people with a glass of beer in their hands celebrating the holiday. But then the localization guy in Turkey told them, you have to stop it. We cannot go out with it. This is going to be a disaster because in Ramadan, we do not eat and we do not drink. And we definitely don't drink beer because this is alcoholic. And so it was a lot of things that you need to be aware of and familiar with, from the cultural nuances to holidays, to local events, to habits. And this is something really, having someone on the ground, having the linguists, the local players that are testing the games, translating it, helping with all the visuals and even the marketing materials. I think it's key to the success when you're breaking into new countries. We also had a question in the chat. Let me just read it. It was about, we have lots of comments, I see. It was about how is it really helpful, game localization, and how to identify the end user. So obviously it's helpful when you can grow your revenues in a new country, okay? When you can grow your audience, when you can gain more players and make more money as a game developer, or at least have more people playing, or more data, more advertising potential. So this is why it's helpful. And we didn't touch upon it here, but there's lots of data that shows that people really prefer to use to play games or buy from websites that speak their language and speak the language they think in. And how to identify the end users, there are lots of data analytics tools that will help you understand where are your gamers coming from, in the internet, it's Google Analytics, social media analytics. In gaming, there are lots of other platforms that help you gain the data on your players. And it's very easy to see when you have people coming from different countries, and then you might consider speaking their language and expanding more in that country. I hope it answers the question. I do want to launch another question to the audience, if we can, please. So one second, let me see how I'm doing it. Okay, so I need to share the results back. Okay. Second questions, guys, are you ready? What's crucial for you when choosing a localization provider? Is it the end-to-end service, expertise in gaming, efficient QA and review process? I'm sure there are other reasons. You're welcome to share it with us in the chat if you really care about the scale or the time SLA or the pricing. We wanted to focus on these three criteria. Okay. So I see, I will end the poll and I will share the results with you so you can see. Do you see the results? Yeah. So most people really care about efficient QA and review process, which makes sense. And now we are going to move to talking about voice localization and video localization. We're all about video games, and we have here with us Chris DiTuri. Chris is an experienced audio professional, is overseeing all our voiceover sessions for several AAA titles. We're happy to have you with Blend, Chris, and thank you for joining us to share your insights. So the mic is yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me, and Mike is a hard act to follow, so we'll do our best though. So basically, I am going to talk to you guys today about kind of the nuts and bolts of voiceover in gaming, kind of where we started, where we're going, a little bit about that, what it takes to do voiceover in gaming, localization in gaming, and kind of the behind the scenes, what you don't really see. Oh, people are saying it's a little difficult to hear me. Let me bring my mic up. Is that a little bit better?
Yes. Try to
Okay,
speak
great.
up. That's great.
Great. So basically what I want to start with is our first example here is back in the 90s is when we really started doing voiceover in video games. You know, the goal of video games was kind of the same as film and television. You know, from the earliest days it was to tell a story. You know, even when you go back to Mario Brothers, Saving the Princess, you know, there was a story there. Frogger crossing the street, there was a story there. So video games were always telling a story. It was just that the medium was not as advanced as film and television, so they had to find other ways to tell the story. And voice was not always a part of that at the beginning. Animations were crude. We really didn't have the technology to incorporate voice, and that started to change in the PlayStation era in the mid-90s. So one of the first kind of hilarious examples of voiceover in gaming is this Resident Evil clip we have here. This is from the original Resident Evil in 1996. If we can go ahead and play this.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life. But Barry, didn't you say you're going back to the dining room to do some research? Why on earth are you here?
I just had something I wanted to check. Now, let's get back to searching for the lost captain and Chris, shall we?
So, is it a Jill sandwich or a gerbil sandwich? It's it's supposed to be a Jill sandwich, but it was everything was so cartoonish, everything was so kind of broken, and you know what's ironic is that back then this was lauded as great. You know, it was the benchmark was to have the voice in there, and that was it. You know, so the fact that we had voice acting, it was, oh my God, really voice acting? That's incredible. You know, that they actually put human voices in the game, and that's kind of where we came from. So let's move to the next slide. So this is where we are now. We've got major actors in voiceover in video games, major voiceover actors. It's prestigious. All sorts of developers want voiceover in their game, whether you're an indie developer, whether you're a AAA developer. It's expected. You know, if you don't have voice in your game, you're missing out on a key aspect of storytelling. Unless you are making a game that is specifically a text-based game, then it's a requirement. We've got people like Idris Elba. We've got Cameron Moynihan. Willem Dafoe is in video games. Elliot Page. Tons of actors. On the sports side, too, if people know the Madden games. Now we've got the announcers in the Madden games. NBA 2K, we've got the announcers in those. Sports stars joining. Marshawn Lynch voices stuff in the Madden games. It's massive. It's become its own medium for cinematic storytelling. Everything is more grounded and cinematic because now we have the technology to back up telling these stories with a vocal performance. Let's move to the next slide. So at the core of what we're doing now is talent casting. Whereas back in the day, it was, when the voice work was so crude, it was kind of like, we need a male voice here. Anyone will do roughly the right. He looks like he's about 40 on the screen, so let's find somebody in that age range. Now it's so much more pinpoint. The animations are better. We know what everybody looks like on screen. It's no longer pixelated graphics. So we have to find actors that fit the roles. And again, going back to that grounded and cinematic, it's got to be completely authentic. Now, different casting houses use different... Well, let's go back. Different casting houses use different metrics for their casting. What I typically look for is voice print uniqueness. I look for archetype fulfillment. We need heroes. We need villains. We need dramatic actors. We need comedy actors. We need people to fulfill all these roles. Demographic fulfillment is another thing. We need older people. We need younger people. We need males. We need females. Other languages, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, English, French. We're also looking at audio quality. We're looking at their studio availability, their experience, their credits in gaming. And then there are other voice intangibles, too, that make up what you use to build a voice roster. Next slide. At the key of all of this in building your talent is having talent management. And this is where a lot of developers will go wrong, is they won't come to a company that specializes in localization or specializes in voiceover. They'll say, well, I'll hire my own actors and I will have them record and I'll do the sessions. The issue with this is that the management gets lost. Voiceover talents have complicated contracts. The expectations are different with video game actors than with commercial. You have to keep up with the availability. You have constant updates on video game voiceover. There's a lot to manage. Then on top of that, the video game actor community is very different than commercial actors. When you're working on a game as a voiceover talent in a video game, it's an ensemble. A lot of the actors talk. So their pay scale things, lots of discrepancies. You can see the article here about the Bayonetta voice actor. She boycotted, her name's Helena Taylor, she boycotted the game industry because of a pay dispute. So as a developer, you don't want to be on the other end of that. And that's why it's good to hire a vendor to handle your voice actors. Another thing is the SAG-AFTRA strike. On July 26th, we had a strike, actually, against the video game employers by SAG-AFTRA, which is the video game union. They negotiated for 18 months before this with some of the largest video game companies, and they weren't able to strike a deal. Now, that's pretty much over consent, compensation, transparency around the use of AI. So that's another big thing that's going on in the voiceover industry right now is AI. And that's another kind of loophole that needs to be managed, So that's a big deal with talent management. Next slide. So when you have gotten your project off the ground, when you have gotten your actors, you've got to start looking at how you record. This is kind of just a little prospectus on Blend Studios, which, this is not really about Blend Studios, but it's just a background on what you need to get these projects done. At Blend, we've got experienced engineers with backgrounds in gaming, TV, radio, music, IVR, and e-learning. We've got 3 on-site studios. We run Mac software, Pro Tools. We've got Source Connect Pro, which is necessary. Not all of your actors are going to live in the same state. So you've got to be able to connect with them remotely. You've got some that live on the West Coast, some that live on the East Coast. We've recorded actors in Malta. We've recorded actors in England. We've recorded actors in Italy, all over the world. You've got to be able to connect with them and record. You've got to have strong audio hardware. In this case, we use UA hardware and UA plugins. You've got to have the isolation booths to record. You've got to have large monitors that they can see for ADR and dubbing. And you've got to have excellent microphones. In this case, we use U87 microphones. This is kind of the litmus of what you need to do one of these projects. Whereas, somebody who's doing a commercial or a podcast or something like that, they may need more of a minimal setup with audio production, but with gaming, it's definitely more of a production. So it's advantageous to hire an audio studio to do this. Next slide. So when you're in session, this is the kind of dynamic, and it varies from studio to studio, but this is kind of the basic what you have. You have your voice talent, you have an audio engineer. Sometimes you have two audio engineers depending on what kind of session it is. If it's a just straight dialogue session, you might only have one. If it's an ADR session, that's where you're syncing to video and you're basically having the talent record to a picture. You might have two audio engineers. You have your voice director, which we're going to get into more what they do. And then you have a script coordinator. A script coordinator is actually one of the most important jobs that's overlooked. They're the person that manages your script. So when your voice talent is reading, they're going to be doing multiple takes of all of these lines. The editor needs to know which takes are the best, which ones the director has selected. The script coordinator is the one taking all the notes in the session. They're the ones sitting there writing take A, take C, comp take B with take D, so that the editor will know exactly what we're delivering. Sessions can go from 1 to 4 hours. That can also change too, depending on the project. Typically, Google Docs is where scripts are managed because everyone can see live changes. The days of paper scripts are gone. It's just too much to handle. But that's pretty much what we're doing. Sometimes Excel too, but basically Google Docs has become the standard for all of that. Next slide. Oh, one back. So game direction is one of the most important aspects of voiceover in video games, and it's one of the most overlooked things. I've worked with so many developers that have said to me, do we really need the game director? We think we can just direct it ourselves. We don't really need, somebody to come in and direct that. And that can be a critical mistake. Game direction is more than just picking the best or the coolest take. The biggest thing about voiceover in a game is that it actually has implications on the game world. What is acceptable in English may not be acceptable in Japanese. What is acceptable in Japanese may not be acceptable in Spanish. It may not be the right lingo. It may not be the right slang. It may not be the right vibe. And that's what your voice director is there for. They're there to disseminate how these words fit into this world, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make this believable and make this immersive. We're past the days of we're just getting voice in there. It doesn't matter, how good it is because the tech's not there. The tech's there. So now we're at the point where we're making this movie quality. We're making it believable. And that's part of what voice direction is guiding the actor to the best performance and also making sure that the words are helping the world building. The sadness, the happiness, the anger, the grief, all of that is conveyed by voice direction. And a developer sometimes will be too close to their own game to see kind of the big picture of what that really needs to be. And that's what a voice director is for. Now, a great example of what I'm talking about here is the game Cyberpunk 2077. Now, this game came out in 2020. It's a Polish developer, CD Projekt Red. They are famous for the Witcher series. They are famous for some other games they've come out with, tabletop stuff. RPGs are really their big thing. Cyberpunk 2077 was one of the biggest releases they've ever done. It had a really rocky launch. The game was very buggy, things like that. But what was really interesting about the game is kind of some of the cultural things that were created. And one thing that I talk about a lot is this word choom. So in the world of Cyberpunk 2077, the word choom is used frequently between characters. In their universe, choom is kind of like a neo-African American slang. It's used to refer kind of like friends and family members, like you're my choom, like it's short for choomba, and it's been kind of appropriated by the non-black residents of Night City. So if you're like a street kid in this game, if you're one of the mercenaries in this game, you're calling all your friends chooms, right? So in a theoretical setting, the Chinese voice director for Cyberpunk may find different scenarios and characters more or less appropriate to use the slang choom than the English voice director, or the Spanish one, or the Polish one. And this is what gives each localized version of the game its own distinct flavor and regional spin. And hence what that does is it changes the world in each version of the game. So when you play the English version of Cyberpunk, it feels like it's more tailored to you than the Polish version would be, than the Spanish version would be. And it's the same for the other people in their language. Now, it's not just this one word doing that. It's a culmination of things. But you see what the point is. You know, other changes that directors can make include references that don't apply in localized cultures, including places, things, peoples. They can have major implications in the world, story structure, its characters, locales, things like that. So, I mean, if there's a holiday in China that does not exist in the US, making that change is going to kind of change the whole series of events. And that's the core of localization, and that's the core of what we're trying to do in making this game believable and immersive. And that's why it's so important. And that's why I show you where we've been and where we are now. We're deep in it. We're changing the game worlds. So with creative services in VO production and VO localization, these are kind of the things that you all need. These are the things you all need to hit the benchmarks for your game. You need script coordination. You need editing. All these files need to be edited. You need dubbing for your game. You're going to have cinematic elements. You're going to have things where the characters need their voices synced, the lips synced. Sound design is going to be a big part of your game. There's always going to be sound effects, things like that, always necessary. Post-production, all of this stuff has to be mixed. In-house direction for the voice and video sync. These are the cornerstones of any audio production for a video game. We can go to the next slide. So in voiceover, this is kind of our production process, and this kind of almost kind of echoes what Mike did with the localization process, but this takes more into account what we're doing behind the scenes after kind of the deal is set up. You know, so Mike and his team have, you know, in the account management setup, and the order entry, they have, you know, sealed the deal, so to speak. We've got a new client. We've got the order entry. You know, they've alerted me that we've got a new thing. So we go and we start preparing the script. We get everything in Google Docs. We get everything broken out line by line. Any sort of grammar thing, any sort of translation, any sort of thing like that is taken care of at that point. We're getting everything booked at that point too. All of the talent, all of the studios, all of the everything. From that point, we're going into voice production, and that's where we're having our sessions with our talent, our voice director, our script coordinators. And then after the sessions are over, that's where we're going to editing. So we're taking, you know, we might have a 2-hour recorded buffer, which a buffer is a full file of audio. So we have a 2-hour recorded buffer, and the editor is chopping all this up into little pieces, little prompts, because these lines are all dropped into the game one by one. So we're chopping all these up into little prompts. We're cleaning them up. We're taking the breaths out, the pops and the clicks. We're making sure the sentence spacing is correct, and we're fixing all of that. Then in QA, someone like me is going back and checking and making sure that all the content is correct, that everything was said correctly, that the audio levels are correct, that there's no noise in the files, nothing like that. I'm naming everything. I'm labeling everything. You may get file names that are, LQ1 underscore 001 underscore 003. All of those have to be accounted for, because when they're dumping these files in Unreal Engine for their game, or Unity, whatever engine they're using, these file names have to be exact. So this is where it gets less creative and more science-y and more technical, is everything has to be perfect. So we're checking all of that. If there are any problems with the read, anything like that, we're then going back to the client. We're saying, hey, we need to book another session to fix A, B, and C. Or, we did this way, but the line doesn't quite match up. Is that okay? Are you good with this change? And then from there, we're delivering to the client. And we're delivering in a file format of their choosing, in a loudness setting of their choosing, depending on what the game is. And that's kind of the whole process. And this can go on and on for months and months. It can be a one-off, depending on what kind of game it is, from the smallest game to the largest game. You can do this for 2 years, 3 years, going back and forth week after week. And then you get expansions and downloadable content. So it keeps going. A lot of these games are live service now. It's no longer you buy the cartridge and that's the game. Now they keep going. So we've kind of gone through where we've been. We've kind of gone through all the processes and everything to get where we are now. So I'm going to leave you guys.
Go in there?
Not yet.
Sorry, Chris.
Not yet, Hila. So I'm gonna leave you guys with a couple of clips here, so you can kind of check out some work, because I'm all about media clips. This is basically a tech demo for a project called Dark that a game developer buddy of mine sent me. And this is kind of showing you an example of something that is localized in both English and Spanish, so you can get a vibe of what that sounds like and how that process is put together. So basically, this is a small project. This is 2 voices. You're going to recognize the male voice. And this is sound design, a little bit of composition, and this is just kind of what a small project would look like. English is first, and then Spanish.
I think that's the only way to find an answer. Did you hear that?
What is this? What's going on? Run! Run!
Want to move to the next one, Chris?
Yes, this is the Spanish.
¿Estás segura de que quieres entrar ahí?
Creo que es la única forma de encontrar una respuesta. ¿Has oído eso?
¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué está pasando? ¡Corre! ¡Corre!
So we will share with you the PowerPoint presentation, guys. We will share the video recording. I do, and Paulo was asking if we work directly with studios in Latam. So Paulo, we do, and we do Mike said he met you and you are in our shortlist, so we will be in touch for sure. I do want to ask you guys one last question, if it's okay. Number 4. Okay. Do you see the poll now? Chris,
Yep.
do you see the poll?
I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
Great. We wanted to ask you if you're ready to take our services to a test drive, and we will be happy to know that. We do, and maybe Alex, you can share in the chat our email address for contacting us. I'm sorry for the technical hiccup. I'm happy it happened in the last slide, but we are happy to be in touch, to meet you, to run a demo, answer questions. As I said, we will share with you the recap. We will share with you the presentation. And just want to see if we missed any comments here. So, oh, I see someone is saying that PowerPoint did this to another presentation yesterday. I guess there is some kind of a bug. Sorry about that. People are agreeing with what we talked about the session direction, having a director. I don't know if you see the comments, Chris.
It's so important.
I saw one comment about post editing and machine translation. Obviously, it's not the best fit for gaming, and we are aware of it, and we always recommend human translation for gaming, but we still recommend post editing or second layer of linguist for reviewing and editing the translation, even if it's a human translation. And you are correct. There are some places where a machine translation will do create more work than save time or money. So Elizabeth, I think it was you. We agree. We totally agree with you. Any other comments, questions? You can use the Q&A. This is a good time to ask us questions. The session is recorded and we will share it with you shortly. In the coming few days, you'll get a recording.